verloning en van technologie tot advies. Bekijk hoe jij ook mee kunt bewegen in een snel veranderende arbeidsmarkt. SD Works for Life, for Work.
Ethos gaat helemaal los. Het grootste aanmerkvoordeel van Nederland met bijvoorbeeld nu alle Nivea bad en douche 5 voor 10 euro en alle andere Leon en de en 2 plus 2 gratis op ethos.nl. Liefst Ethos.
Trotse sponsor van Team SD Works. SD Works for Life, for Work.
Fijn hoor, zo'n bundel die precies bij je past. Maar betaal je alleen voor wat jij nodig hebt. Gewoon Hollands.
Doe je meer dan koken alleen. Je maakt er de mooiste herinneringen. Superkeukens. Ja, het is super.
Elk kantje kan gewoon vliegen. Nu met hoge korting op Sian. En €72 korting op de Apple iPhone 12.
De collectie is binnen. Kom langs of bestel met ons inspiratie.
Beste Pasen, toveren onze fijne dingen. En wanneer je het belletje laat rinkelen, inviteren die soms gebeuren.
Samen met een golden moment.
Bruin. Nee, grijs. Ja, grijs. Wacht, misschien toch bruin? Of toch grijs? Waarom kiezen? Neem ze allebei. Nu bij Specsavers. De tweede bril gratis. Bij alle brillen. Aanvullend verzekerd. En het is de eerste bril ook gratis. Kom snel langs.
Eet, drink, werk, nieuws, lunch, slaap. 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 Eet, drink, werk, nieuws, lunch, slaap.
Verwonderen. Nationale Museumweek.
Dit is de tijd van doen. Als je waterschade hebt en je wilt je vlug vervangen, zocht hem dus met dromen en je zaag je op. 5 minuten geleden was dit nog een hoop. Vervoeren, zagen of wel eens met dood naar de dik in het land.
Allemaal voor één klok?
Los daarbij pakketbedrijf van planken zagen, pakketten met busje,
En dan naar binnen dragen.
oude eruit en nieuwe erin.
Nou, gelukkig kan je bij ASR kiezen voor duurzaam herstel. Minder gedoe voor jou, beter voor de wereld en net zo mooi. ASR doet het.
De volledig elektrische Ford Mustang Mach-E. Direct leverbaar met een nette bijtelling van €284 per maand.
Duurzaam schadeherstel. Minder gedoe voor jou, beter voor de wereld en net zo mooi. ASR doet het. Vraag je adviseur naar een duurzame verzekering van ASR.
Mooiste bestemmingen. Boek je bij. Prijsvrij vakanties. De beste deal voor deze zomer. Boek je bij. Prijsvrij vakanties.
Hey, Teun. John, hij is nu in de flat.
Hi John, how to? Now you fell over with your nose in the butter. Eh? Sorry. So, why the rocks be in your mouth here? Delicious. No, it's delicieux. From Lidl.
Deze lente vindt u bij Lidl weer ruim 350 luxe delicieux producten. Boek ook de beste last minutes voor de meivakantie bij prijsvrij vakanties. Lente met delicieux. Met Beterleven kipnijfilet per schaal voor maar €4,99. Beterleven luxe broodsalade per bak voor maar €1,99. En onze best geteste chocolademousse per bak voor maar €2,99. Exclusief bij Lidl.
Vanaf morgen is de gewone avondshow weer terug. Na een weekje stand-up, clubje spelen wordt het weer hoog tijd voor de baan van de dag. Spannende gasten, oprechte en gespeelde verontwaardiging over het nieuws. Waar het over gaat, ik heb geen idee, dat weten wij ook niet. Dit is hyper actueel. Maar ik ben er sowieso tot morgenavond op NPO 1 bij de avondshow met Arjen de Bach.
The brake disc overheated because there was probably still some pressure on them, and so the wheels were not turning freely. This dragging of the brakes got the temperature higher and higher.
Investigators conclude the dragging must have occurred while taxiing at Dorval Airport.
Nose wheel steering?
R.
Naturally, there will be a lot of heat developed on that brake system if it's dragging as the airplane accelerates. But for that kind of heat to develop, the left brake had to be dragging for some period of taxi time.
To find out how long the left brake might have been dragging, the team talks to the controller overseeing the flight's departure from Dorval Airport.
They taxied from the hangar there to the runway here.
Did the crew report anything unusual on the taxi?
This isn't surprising if the brakes were only dragging on one side.
The way you taxi in Metroliner, you have a nose wheel steering. But just one dragging brake, you can turn the nose wheel steering gear and you won't be able to notice that the brake is dragging. So this is possibly what happened.
Club at 420, we're holding in position, runway 24 left, ready for takeoff. What about the takeoff?
It took them a long time to get airborne.
Really? Where did they lift off? That's more than halfway down the runway.
The plane lifted off between the A1 and A2 taxiways, which are between 4,100 and 5,500 feet from the runway threshold.
So takeoff distance to rotation should be 1,800 feet. This plane took more than 4,000.
The problem with the brakes began probably as the airplane departed the hangar.
It must have been the brake drag.
They used 1,400 feet to go to the threshold of 24 left. So for about 5,200 feet, the brakes were dragging and creating a lot of overheating on the disc of the brakes.
The findings back up their suspicions. The brakes must have been dragging, which explains why it took the plane so long to reach takeoff speed.
Rotate.
And they went up in the wheel well, very, very hot.
12 minutes in the air is plenty of time for the overheated brakes to raise the temperature in the wheel well.
When the landing gear comes out, the doors close, and then if you have any heat in there, that heat has nowhere to dissipate. So the temperature inside goes up very, very quickly.
But what could have caused the brake drag in the first place?
What about the parking brake? Just like in your car, if you drove away with the parking brake on and you keep driving, it's still going to create friction, which therein creates heat. Parking brake off. Roger.
Investigators wonder if there was an issue when the captain released the parking brake.
If the parking brake had been on, you would have had all motors overheated. Only one wheel overheated. So somehow, whenever the parking brake was released, one of them let go, the right side, the other one didn't. Otherwise, you would have had two fires.
They searched the manufacturer's documentation for evidence of faulty parking brakes.
Now here's something.
A 5-year-old newsletter advises pilots to verify the parking brake is fully released.
Some residual pressure can remain even with the knob in the off position.
I'm sad as a pilot to see that this information was through newsletters and not into the aircraft flight manual. It was very deceiving to see this.
Were the pilots unaware of a faulty parking brake? Without a flight data recorder and with the pilots deceased, they'll never know for sure. But it's a solid theory.
Alright, so the brake drag caused wheel well fire.
The team has finally determined how the fire started, but there's one question remaining.
Could the crew have done anything to prevent any of this from happening.
When you take the controls, make sure to make smooth inputs on the nose wheel steering. Passengers can feel it. We want to give them a nice ride.
The investigators returned to earlier in the cockpit voice recording to see if the crew of Prop Air 420 realized their brakes were dragging.
None admitted to the attack on Sophie Lancaster. They also would not confess to a group attack against either of them. It soon came to light that two of the suspects, 16-year-old Ryan Herbert and 15-year-old Brendan Harris, had a history of violence. In a previous incident, they had kicked and punched somebody to the ground, which luckily didn't result in any major injuries. As the questioning of the boys continued, a team was dispatched to their homes to retrieve the clothes they had been wearing that night. Ryan Herbert's clothes appeared to have blood on them. The scientific analysis would be vital, as with the other boys' clothes, it wasn't clear whether certain stains were blood or not. Before long, there would be another lead. Investigators looked into the movements of Robert Maltby and Sophie Lancaster on the night of the attack. They were able to identify a garage on Market Street that they had called in at whilst they were heading to the park. When looking further into the garage, they discovered in the early morning hours, within an hour of the attack in Stubbley Park, a male had been seen near the garage hosepipe and appeared to be washing blood off his hands and face. Unfortunately for the police, the CCTV system wasn't working, so no footage had been gathered. As they continued to investigate, despite this appearing to be a promising lead, it turned out to be unconnected. The man had been assaulted in a completely separate incident, and this was corroborated by several witnesses. Despite the setback, DCI Holden's hunched...
Okay, good. 10 minutes, let's go. He's thinking clearly, that's what I wanted to test. Can he still think clearly under pressure? Flipped around, got the bearing, and once he started to move, I knew that was good, because then you get the blood flowing. Good navigation, on point. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is somewhere where I've lowered a big old hemp rope, just the sort of thing they used in World War II. Yeah, they get up and down the stairs, once they get up, they'll pull the ropes away, you know, and they dominate the high ground. But I threw one down from the top yesterday, so we're looking at that somewhere along the base of this cliff. Okay, here we go. So we're going to use this to go up. That's a long way up. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is somewhere where I've lowered a big old hemp rope.
Channing Tatum and I are close to our extraction point, but there's one final challenge he needs to pass before this journey is over.
Okay, here we go. So this is classic World War II style commando rope, you know, and they'd use this to get people, ammunition, supplies up, and then once they were up, pull the rope away, dominate the high ground.
That's a long way up. This little crack looks like the most wettest, gnarliest passage ever, so I don't know, this is not going to be fun.
This will be a punishing 100-foot rope climb up a sheer vertical cliff face. The rain-slicked rocks will make finding a solid foothold nearly impossible. We've got to be careful during the ascent. One wrong step and we could plummet to the rocks below.
Need to be safe on this, so like, I'm going to leave you one of these. We're just going to, what's called a lark's foot around it. So you put it around, okay? Through itself. Just one turn, just like that. It'll slide, yeah? Yep. But it will lock. I'm also, when I get to the top, I'm going to secure this rope, throw that down as well, because I don't know how strong this thing is. Okay. Where it gets steep and slippery, you can also use this as a foot strap, if it's difficult. Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you a shout when I'm up. Yeah, this is going to be quite physical. Wet, steep rock. all the way to the front. That is very sketchy. Wet, shaggy rock. This is gonna be fun. Tiny little chimney bit. Okay, Channing, rope coming down. When it comes rock, mud, rain, nasty, gnarly combination. You're good to start, you're secure, I've got you. Well done, Fanny. Good job. Keep going this way, you have to muscle it out.
Nancy.
You alright? Alright, hold up. Great effort. Well done.
Wat de bal brengen dan? Pak de bal. Pak de bal. Ja. Pak de bal. Bye bye.
Robinson's sister. I was 9 and she was 12. Mom and my 2 sisters and I lived in Detroit growing up, and then we moved out of there to be in a safer neighborhood.
Jill was not in a good mood that night.
Early reports had indicated she had a fight with her mother.
Carol repeatedly asked her, "What's wrong, honey? What's wrong?"
She packed a backpack, got on her bike, and then left.
I haven't seen her since, and I wasn't really very worried for an hour or so because she's very stubborn, and I thought she'll stand in the next yard and think about it and go around the block or something. And then I thought maybe she went to visit her father.
The swear gets hard. Okay, so then I don't want to do this. Because I'm not gonna cry. But anyway, so she becomes missing up her bike.
Her father lived some distance away. So what she did is she packed a backpack, got on her bike, and then left. And that is the last anyone of it had ever seen of her.
And I'm the one that was the last one to see her, and I had to go out to the shed to look for her bike because my mom was gone to work or something. And so I had to go out and look, and her bike was gone. So I think that she went to my dad's, which was like 5 miles down the road, 6 in Birmingham. And she was last seen somewhere along the way at Tiny Tim's hobby shop or whatever that was called. I don't know.
Mrs. Robinson is especially worried because today, Christmas, is something that Jill was really looking forward to. She had saved enough money from her allowance to buy gifts. Gifts that still remain unopened.
She was missing from December 21st, and the day after Christmas. I remember, like, we couldn't open our presents. We didn't open our presents. We were waiting. It wasn't even Christmas. not. Doesn't matter. But the day after Christmas, I was there when the cop came to the door and said, your sister's
Ja, waar is jouw bal dan?
in their head and found in the middle
Ja,
of
waar is jouw bal
the
dan?
fever.
Ja.
And I remember my mom just reacting and being...
Heb je hem weer kwijtgemaakt? Hè?
So, very
Ja.
sad
De snelste ronde ooit. Snelste reken op Indianapolis. Op die baan. 237 mijl gemiddeld. Dus reken maar om. Maar 1,6. 83 plus of zo, ja.
Ik heb het nog nooit gereden.
Maar dan ben je dus echt, dan is alles echt, klopt alles. Alles moet ook kloppen om zo uit te
En dan staat de achtervleugel meer naar beneden in plaats van gewoon naar boven.
Die staat zo, ja, negative. En zo weinig mogelijk weerstand op het rechtstuk.
Heerlijk. En als je daarna nu eens aan terugdenkt, denk je wel eens, wat heb ik in godsnaam gedaan?
Ja, maar...
Ik dacht, die zou zeggen, wel nee joh.
Maar dat is 1990 als de race, maar ik heb
Dit was jouw eerste overwinning.
Maar je kon onder die witte lijn nog, hè?
Ja, de baan was toen ook heel anders. Ze hadden toen de warm-up lane zeg maar onder die witte lijn. Maar er werd altijd gezegd in de rijdersbriefing, ga niet onder die witte lijn. Maar er werd nooit gezegd van als je het doet krijg je een penalty.
Nee.
Dus iedereen deed het.
Kortste lijn.
Boefje!
En qualifying engines, toch?
En je had qualifying motors.
Hier, ja. Met mini-vrouw erbij, ja.
Ongelimiteerde banden om mee te trainen, ongelimiteerde motors, motoren, alles kon gewoon. Je was daar ook 3 weken aan een stuk.
Ja.
Heel veel aan het rijden toe. Met je spare auto.
En de haren, hè?
Als ik een What is going on? So go check if you follow with me, I'm not following with you.
So he referred to this scene from Indiana Jones on a cliff scenario, and he has to like step off of it. Seem like I'm endangering myself, but no, I just have to trust him. Trust that the net's gonna be there. It felt like some sort of twisted nightmare because he'd already gotten so much money out of me that to decide suddenly that he's completely full of shit and he's a con artist and, you know, to acknowledge that and just say, get out of my life, get away from me, I'm gonna call the police, would be to accept the loss and kind of give up on this happily ever after fantasy that he was still selling me, that I really very much wanted to believe in. Explain what? I mean, how would I explain it? And what would my family do other than, like, you know, kind of have me committed to an institution, which would have been preferable for what happened.
So there's your red. Very vibrant red.
I like that.
Yeah. This is black again. I bought a lot of the black ones because that seems to be a color that sells fast. Alright, here's another purse. I think this is like those scrunchy bag ones.
Looks like it just doesn't have the pattern.
Yeah, it's more of a solid.
That was a good idea. Yeah. Well, that is a big purse.
It is. And then you just
That's a
cinch it.
taking the kids to church purse.
This is, yeah. This is a grandma, well, I wouldn't say grandma.
I'd say mom.
This is a mom, have everything prepared purse.
Absolutely it is.
So, you can carry it flat, or you can carry it like this.
Boom.
It's kind of cool.
Beautiful.
And it does come with a long strap as well.
Beautiful.
So we've got a bunch of those. So there are
I think Heather could be a purse model.
2, 3,